Greetings, COM 610. This is Ben Frazier, so this is 610B. Those of you that are in my area of the class, as opposed to those that are in the class with Dr. Brown. And it is a blustery Friday afternoon. There's snow, and not a lot of it here though, but it is windy and cold, and there is some snow on the ground. The school is closed, so you can see I'm home. Well, maybe you can't, but those of you that have seen other videos that I've done could see that I'm home today. And it's Friday, and I am so sorry I'm this late in getting to you, but I just wanted to make sure that you knew that I read your responses, and I wanted to respond to them, even though they're very similar to the responses that Dr. Brown had for his portion of the class. But nevertheless, we talked about it. We thought, well, I better go ahead and talk to you, and we'll decide if we're going to trade off or if we're both going to just keep doing this, and we'll figure that out as the class progresses. Normally, I respond to your questions of the week before on a Monday or Tuesday, and I will try to keep to that most times. I certainly don't want to wait till Friday like I did this week, but this has been, because of the beginning of the semester, it's been a really busy week, and I just didn't get to it until now. So, hope you're enjoying the reading. Our reading this time led us to 5 questions that I put up, and I really felt your answers to the questions were very good. You're just doing a great job, and I'm thankful for that. The first couple of weeks I give a lot of grace. So I think all of you are doing well so far, so that's good. The very first question got to the heart of this class, and that is the characteristics of entertainment education. And Wesley said that there were 2 important things. One, he called it purpose, and then design. Now, purpose I take to be intentionality, and actually design was also mentioned by Courtney and Mary. And those are 2 very important parts of the entertainment educational process. Jerry rightly said that it cannot happen by accident, and that's absolutely true. If it happens by accident, it can be entertaining and it can be educational, both. But that's not the system that we're teaching, entertainment education, and we'll get to that in a second, why it doesn't qualify to the entertainment education. But it still can be a useful thing and a good thing, just like Jesus' parables were entertaining, and they're intentional, and they were educational, but there were some things that they didn't do that we would include for our purposes here in terms of communication. Jennifer brought up several issues that came very close to a complete answer for entertainment education. She talked about it has to be strategic, which I take to mean intentionality. She talked about there needed to be a theory, which that is another one of the major issues. And then she talked about social responsibility, which I would think is like pro-social or social change or something like that. Richard, you emphasized that entertainment education had to be both entertaining and educational. And I thought that was a good reminder, because we get involved in the discussion and we forget this is an educational activity that we're involved in, and it's also an entertaining activity, and it's the marriage of those 2 things. And you said both of those things are a marriage to address a social problem or a social issue. Several of you mentioned that it should not be boring, and that's absolutely true. Education for so long, especially media education, had the reputation for being boring. You know, it was barely better than having somebody speak or your teacher speak in class. And so that is a key element too. When we say entertaining, we mean something that captures the imaginative part of us, and something that engages us and transports us into that story or into that character. Michelle and others mentioned the importance of characters, and how she sometimes becomes friends with some of the characters. And of course, that's the old parasocial relationship that you may be familiar with. If not, by the end of this class, you certainly will. That we can have a relationship, even with people we've never met, but that we observed on television or from a distance in some way, and have a relationship with that person. That's a parasocial relationship. Anthony talked about a different term. He mentioned infotainment, or some people call it edutainment. And those are really interesting terms and fun terms, and in some cases useful terms. But for the purposes of this class, we're talking about entertainment education, and that's a very clear and specific term. So what do we mean by entertainment education? We mean that 4 things, and entertainment education has to have those 4 things. It's a larger thing than that. It is educational and it is entertaining. And but here's what the 4 things are. First, and as many of you got, they need to be intentional. Secondly, it needs to be research driven. That's why the parables aren't entertainment education. They weren't research driven. Third, they're not theoretical, but it has to be theoretical. And finally, it has to talk about a kind of change, a pro-social change. So entertaining, research-based, theoretical. And when I say theoretical, remember that entertainment education is a strategy. It is not itself a theory. It is several theories support it. And it takes part of several theories when to produce an entertaining educational piece. But it itself is a strategy and not a theory. And then finally, it is pro-social. It is trying to make a specific kind of change. So that was the first question. And I think probably the most important. And we'll briefly go through the rest of these, but I really think that's the key that we wanted you to have this week. Now, next question was question 2. What do you think that entertainment has a negative image with regard to educational potential? And we ask you here to reference an article. And several of you did, and the articles I thought were very, very interesting. The discussion went in a different way than I thought it would, at least for time, and that is many of you mentioned that it is not, and this is Jasmine and Wesley and others like that, mentioned that it is not, TV is not all bad. That there are many values and many programs that teach us values and are helpful and useful to us. And I'm glad you did that, because we do need to be reminded that sometimes television has this bad rap that everything happens is negative, and that's just not true. There's a lot of good programming, and some of you mentioned some of that, like Sesame Street and others. Jerry talked about a very important issue as well in this question, and that he says, what is the proper amount of time we spend on television? And so what he was saying is maybe not even the programming so much, but the time that we spent maybe is the more serious issue that we need to deal with. And I just thought that was very good. Courtney, I liked her discussion on anime and how it helped her make life commitments through one of the characters that she watches on the anime. And so the truth is that there's both good and bad influences that you can get with entertainment, and it's not all negative. Question 3, what does media content easily drift towards entertainment degradation? And Wesley, who led most questions, he was the first one to respond to most questions. I think the 5th one somebody else did, Matt or someone. But Wesley again came in, and he said, and it kind of started a whole discussion in this area, that education is boring. And he just said one of the problems with education is boring, and then we talked a little bit about that before. And I'm sure I am terrible with names, so if I mess your name up, please phonetically tell me how to say your name, email me back, or call me and tell me how to say your name. I apologize right now if I mess any of your names up. I'm just bad with them, and that's just something I've got to learn to be better at, and I hopefully when I grow up someday I will. No. Aquila, I hope I'm saying that right, talked about the agenda for producers, and this is on the question 3, where we drift into entertainment degradation. She says, what is their agenda? What are they trying to do? Are they trying to create pro-social things, or are they just trying to make money? And sometimes the money is the degradation is the easy way towards that, towards large people watching, and I'm glad she brought that up because it kind of balanced out some of the discussion there. She also brought up the desensitization that the audience sometimes goes through that, and I think what she meant by that was, well, 20 or 30 years ago, what we thought was bad, we would call really mild today, and things that are we would call bad today wouldn't even be allowed on 20 years ago. So there's that kind of change that has happened through time. Okay, question 4 was about Miguel Sabido and his role in entertainment education. Yara briefly mentioned that he was the creative framework for the theories theories behind entertainment education. He saw what was happening in Simplemente Maria, and then he was in Mexico, and he had to put on these novellas or these soap operas, and so he became a very important character in this, as he used research, and he used theory, and he used pro-social and intentionality to make these entertaining and educational stories, and really oversaw that sort of thing. And so he was a very positive in that place. And most of you got that. It was a fairly easy question, I think, for you. I said I wouldn't mention Wesley again, but Wesley had a great little line that I just want to bring up. He said, Sabido built the launch pad. And I like that. You know, we got the rocket taken off. Anyway, it's not the rocket, it's entertainment education. But he did build that. He framed it, as Yara says, and built the launch pad for entertainment education. So I appreciate that. Okay, and then the last question we had was Simplemente Maria. What role did it play? And of course, it was the inspiration, even though it wasn't itself technically entertainment education, because there wasn't the research and the theory. There certainly was an intention to change people, and so there was intentionality, and there was embedded in there were pro-social messages, but there wasn't the research and there weren't the theories behind it. But it became the inspiration, and of course that caught the imagination of Miguel Sabido and others, and then we just saw a real fostering of that whole and developing of that whole entertainment education. So those are some of my thoughts. I thought you did very well. You handled yourself well in the discussion board. Keep up the good work. Keep reading for this next week, and I'll try to respond earlier Monday or Tuesday. Stay warm. If you're like me, it's really windy and really blustery here, and it could be cold. So let you go. Bye-bye.